starting a photography business in the middle of a pandemic with no knowledge on how to run a photography business or how to even do any photography in general. That's where we are, and that's what I'm telling you guys today. My year in review of 2022, 5 things that I wish I knew beforehand, and comparison of what my photos looked like in the beginning of the year and what they look like now. A quick overview. This story actually starts a couple months before January of 2022. I wasn't feeling my major in college as much as I thought I would be, and I actually started a food blog for recipes that turned into a passion for food photography that eventually in the beginning of 2022 led to me starting my own LLC, where I would start this photography journey in the middle of this pandemic. So as you just heard, it started with food photography, but now, a year later, I have dived into so many more things and I've learned so much, come so far from the girl who at the beginning of the year literally didn't even know how to use a camera. Now I've had so many paid gigs, so much experience, so much more love for photography in general, especially food photography, always. But yeah, so I'm going to tell you about the 5 things that I wish I knew beforehand, because I feel like they would be helpful if I were to do this all over again. So number 1, relax. Nothing is actually set in stone. So I feel like when I started my photography business, I was so nervous and I was worried that everything that I was going to do was, if I made a mistake, it was the final end all be all and that was it. So I feel like I just would have liked to know in the beginning for someone to say like, hey, you're going to make mistakes and that is perfectly fine, that is perfectly normal. It's actually expected and that's the best way. You should make mistakes because you want to learn from them, and if you don't make mistakes, well, then it's much harder to learn faster. So I would have liked to tell myself that even if stuff doesn't go right, it's going to be okay, and just relax. I feel like it was so stressful in the first couple of months, especially not knowing where to go from the beginning of photos and portfolios and contracts and everything like that. You're going to make mistakes. You don't know what you're doing, you're brand new at it, that's how you learn, and nothing is set in stone. That's like, I keep repeating it because that is so important. I feel like I didn't understand that until now. So yeah, I would definitely put that at number 1. Number 2, comparison is probably the hardest thing that you are going to have to deal with as a photographer. I would say when you're starting, but literally all the way up until now, going on Instagram, going on social media and comparing my photos to someone else's photos is probably one of the more bad things that you can do as a photographer. And I say this because anytime that you're comparing your situation to someone else's completely different situation. I was comparing me, who has literally 0 knowledge of photography at the beginning, to someone who has 10 years of photography and has the most beautiful photos on their Instagram. It's not going to be the same, and all it did was make me feel worse. So I would say definitely stop comparing yourself to anyone else. Don't think about it, and if you can, work on keeping the comparisons out of social media, taking it out of the context where you're like, is my photo as good as theirs? Why does their photo look better than mine? How can I make mine like theirs? Don't worry about that. Be yourself, work on your photos for how you like them, and everything will fall into place. Alright, number 3, it goes a little bit with what I mentioned before, but expecting myself to niche down and stay in one lane of photography, which for me was food photography at the beginning, without ever going into any other photography. Now, that to me now sounds absolutely outrageous, and one of the main reasons I started doing photography is because I wanted to have a way that I could always express myself creatively. I wanted to have a way that I could creatively express myself all the time without having any restrictions, and that's exactly what I did when I first started. I put a restriction, boxed myself into just food photography, and I feel like if I hadn't done that at the beginning, I would have seen much more growth much quicker, as going into all of these other different types of photography helped me learn composition, it helped me learn lighting, it helped me learn everything much quicker and apply it back to food photography when I needed to. So in general, I know that it's sometimes, for some people, it's a really good thing to niche down, but for me, I would have liked to know that it's okay to get out of that one subject and to shoot whatever you want, whenever you want to. Quick interruption to tell you to boop the like button, subscribe so that I can give you more content like this, and you can see more content from my channel about food photography, photography in general, recipes, and so on. Alright, let's go back. So number 4 would be understanding that it really doesn't matter as much about the equipment that you have as much as it does your knowledge on how to use the equipment that you actually have, and the passion behind wanting to take good photos and doing everything you can to get those photos. So I say this as, when I first started, I only had my kit lens, which was a 15 to 45 millimeter lens. Now I have a couple different ones, but I would constantly yearn for a better lens and be like, oh, if I just had a better lens, these photos would be so much better. But in reality, those photos would be better if I would have taken more time to do more technique and just knew a little bit more, practiced my knowledge a little bit more, honed in on the smaller details of the photos. Really, I would just like to tell myself that 1 year later, even though I have a whole bunch of other lenses, there are still times where I reach to that 15 to 45 millimeter kit lens because it is still a great lens. I just would have loved to give it a little bit more appreciation for all the great photos that it took and all of the good things that it helped me do in the beginning and now. And number 5 is probably my motto for life, especially in the past couple of years, is just wishing that I had more compassion for myself in every aspect of running a business, being a photographer, and everything in between, just as a person. I think it's really easy to get caught up in perfectionism and seeing all of the mistakes that we've made, seeing how things can improve and be better, but if I could just talk to myself and give myself a little bit more compassion in the beginning, even up till now, about how really well we were doing for what we have. I think just giving myself the compassion to realize that this is just the beginning, it is going to get better, I'm going to get better, I'm going to like my photos more, and everything's going to get easier if we just take some time and relax. So yeah, I would say if I could, I would have loved to know to give myself more compassion, because at the end of the day, I'm doing this because I want to run my own business. I want to be in charge of my own life, and I really do love photography, and it, at the end of the year, now that we're looking back at it, it all comes together no matter what. So why not be nicer to myself along the way? That'll make things a lot easier, right? So yeah, that is something I will definitely take with me into next year as we go through this. So finally, we're at the point where we can compare my photos from the beginning of the year to now, and without further ado, I'll just let you see. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for coming on this journey with me to talk about my first year as a photographer and the things that I wish I would have known beforehand. Hopefully this brings some knowledge for you and you get to use that, and I will continue to use it for my next year. And subscribe so that we can continue on this journey together. And that's it. I hope you have an amazing new year. Bye.